on, everybody? Welcome back. Justin here as always. Thank you for clicking on today's video. If you like what I do here, if you like my videos, support the video, support the channel by liking and commenting down below, and I know you will because you're awesome and you got a lot to say about Fear Street 1978. Now, before we jump into my review for Fear Street 1978, guys, I've been covering this series like crazy. I've done a lot of videos talking about Fear Street, everything from the music, the books, you name it, I've covered it. Just yesterday, I posted a complete song breakdown for every song featured in Fear Street 94. I'm going to do that for 1978 as well. So that playlist is linked down below. Check that out if you're a Fear Street fan. Now let's get into my review, my official in-depth review of Fear Street 1978. A summer of fun turns into a gruesome fight for survival as a killer terrorizes Camp Nightwing in the cursed town of Shadyside. Now, when you fire up Fear Street 1978, it kicks off with a nice little recap from the first movie. It was cool to revisit some of those kills from 1994, put you right back in the excitement of the Fear Street world. We start off with Dina and Josh dealing with Samantha with her possessed ass. Dina doing quite well after being stabbed, I might add. She didn't really be showing any signs of distress from being stabbed directly in the stomach. Maybe she forgot she was stabbed or something. Adrenaline. We'll chalk it up to adrenaline. From there, Dina and Josh bring their possessed friend Samantha to the home of the mysterious phone caller from the first movie, C. Berman, who's played by Jillian Jacobs. She was the sole survivor of the 1978 Camp Nightwing massacre. Someone who has all the answers pertaining to her possessed friend there, who is hell-bent on killing everybody now. I'll tell you what, Dina's a good girlfriend, not killing her demonic ass on sight after that shit she pulled. C. Berman is the one who holds all the keys to unlocking the mysteries of Shadyside and not only saving Samantha from possession, but also ending the curse that's been plaguing the town for centuries. Jillian Jacobs telling the story of the massacre at Camp Nightwing in a sort of Are You Afraid of the Dark, Midnight Society style story time is what provides the flashback story that transports us into the 70s. Sort of like Wayne's World style, if you will, with the diddly-loo, diddly-loo, diddly-loo. Now, one of the things they've done really well with this series so far, and something that I wanted to point out as a major positive, is the continuity. The way they're able to transition from 1994 to 78, the way they set up 1666, that type of continuity is something you just don't see often in horror movies that have multiple sequels. So they're doing that right, and I have to give them credit for that. That's something you don't see, especially if you think about jumbled timelines in Halloween or Friday the 13th or even Nightmare on Elm Street. They're doing a really good job with continuity, and it really adds to the world that they're creating in Fear Street. Is something you really have to credit the writers and directors for. It's pretty cool. Again, with 1978, we have a great soundtrack. It's not quite as obtrusive as 1994's jukebox assault of a soundtrack. There's some great tunes throughout, but the placement of all the songs is just a little more subtle in this movie, which I appreciated. And another cool thing we get here is some more background on some of those killers from the first movie, including a little bit of an origin story of one of the killer's iconic looks in the first movie. We find out how he is, the way he is. I'm not going to spoil anything, but finding out how one of the killers received his iconic look was pretty cool. But the problem is, once we find out who our killer is, who is committing the Camp Nightwing massacre, the movie loses a little bit of steam. Once the slasher elements of the movie really get going, it starts to fall into a lot of common horror and slasher tropes that we've seen a lot of times before.
Yeah, I'm supposed to run, right? Okay, I'm ready!
The killer running from room to room, chasing the people as they hide in bathroom stalls or behind kitchen counters, all crouched down as the killer walks over them and looks around and can't see them, like all that type of stuff, like the Jurassic Park kitchen scene kind of a deal. You have a lot of characters giving exposition dumps that they try to pass off as plot, which got a little annoying. A lot of those slasher stalking scenes and these exposition dump scenes started to feel really, really familiar. Aside from the obvious main Sarah Fear cursed through line, there's basically two questions posed in the beginning of this movie. Who is C. Berman and who is the slasher gonna be? Being that the killers in these movies are possessed by evil forces, it really could be anyone. And the mystery of that is something really cool that the Fear Street series has done. As you watch the movie, as you arrive at camp, start to meet all these characters, you start wondering who the slasher is going to be. It's a really fun aspect of suspense. Now, I know I said at the beginning that Jillian Jacobs plays C. Berman, but they do a really clever thing to where they don't really tell you the full character's name in the movie. You don't know which character in the movie is the sole survivor until you get further down the line. I'm not going to spoil it. So that was a really clever thing they did to show you that at the beginning of the movie, yes, they're talking to C. Berman, but once they flash back and you show the young version of all these characters, you really don't know who that is. You don't know who the survivor is going to be until they're the survivor. And that was really clever. So once you find out who the killer is, it really just turns into a standard stalk and slash, and being that he only uses an axe, kind of rinse and repeat as far as the kills go. Once that first axe kill happened, it's a pretty brutal kill, and you're like, oh shit, that's pretty badass. But then the next kill, it's like, oh, he's just gonna whack him with the axe. Oh, they're gonna get hit with the axe again. Got a little repetitive in that aspect. Another issue that this movie has is the setting. Fear Street 1994 had this amazing neon aesthetic taking place in the city, in the mall, with all the kids having cool clothes and neon colors and all the shops in the mall. You had the really cool sequence in the neon lit grocery store, different locations like that. The location in this, I just didn't feel the era of the 70s. The 90s were portrayed so well and so vividly in that movie. The movie looked amazing and colorful and really exciting to look at. The movie had a really sort of drab look to it, to be honest with you. That could sound a little nitpicky, but when they're selling this whole trilogy of movies as being these three individual distinct eras, the 1994 era really popped with bright, vivid aesthetic. And then when you go to 1978, I just didn't feel absorbed in the world of 78 like I did in 1994. There's really only two characters that I gave two shits about whatsoever in this movie at all. That's the two main sisters that you get in the movie. They're really great. The performances are all good. The performances in the movie are fine. It's just they didn't really take the time to develop them. There's no really standout characters. I know people really liked Simon and Kate from the first movie. There's no real characters that stand out that have a lot of personality. And a lot of that has to do with just the way the movie was set up. This movie didn't quite have that fun vibe of 1994. You're starting off pretty heavy, coming off the heels of 94, and then there's a pretty gnarly, like once we get to the camp, there's a pretty gnarly like bullying scene that happens right from the jump, and all the characters are super unlikable. In a lot of the camp movies, a lot of the camp horror movies, you have a lot of people arriving to the camp and joking and laughing and having fun.
I'm a happy camper. I love the summer sun.
And you kind of settle into the more disturbing stuff that happens in slasher movies, and it helps develop the characters, but you just didn't have that fun stuff. You set people up before you start knocking them down, build up some of the characters, and a lot of them frankly were kind of annoying and shitty. Now I was really looking forward to Fear Street 1978, and now although it sounds like I'm being harsh on the movie, I didn't hate the movie. I didn't even really dislike the movie. Maybe I built it up too much, but it let me down a little bit because I expected more. The movie sets up this amazing lore and backstory, and they give you that in the first act, but once I said like the slasher elements started, it just really kind of felt really familiar. Like all the scenes and the beats of this movie, aside from some of the Sarah Fear curse stuff, just felt so familiar that I've seen it 1,000 times. The kills were boring. The stalk and slash scenes were just, I wasn't really that invested. I did care about the two main characters and their storyline, and ultimately the movie ended on a really cool note that sets up 1666. But when it comes down to it, is it as strong as 1994? Not in my opinion. I forgot to give my rewatchability score in 1994. If I had to score from 1 to 10 the rewatchability on 1994, it's going to get a hard 8.5, 9. This is sitting more at about the 6.5 range. I definitely won't go back to revisit this as much as the first one, but ultimately I did like it overall, but there's a lot that kept me from loving it, and I really wanted to love it. So those are my thoughts on Fear Street 1978. I do encourage you to watch it. I think the continuity and the whole story and what it's leading to is really cool. And some of you folks might really like the camp aspect of it, but I didn't feel the nostalgia. I wasn't attracted to the characters, and the kills were a little weak, but maybe you guys will like it. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below. I want to hear your thoughts on this trilogy. I'll be reviewing 1666, obviously, so be sure you're subscribed for all the Fear Street content. And guys, I think we're done here. I appreciate it. Stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
I love movies. Gosh, I love movies. I love watching them, and I love making them.